There are two sides to everything in this world. Take a coin, for example. I would show you a coin. I don't have a coin. A coin has two faces, heads and tails. It can only be two. Now, take a very basic human being into your mind. A human being from a distance only has two faces as well. He has sadness. He has sadness, despair, loneliness, and he has happiness, joy. But humans from a distance have two faces like a coin, and they can only have two faces. Now, what happens when you mix free will with a human being? I didn't say the human before had free will. What happens? Because surely you would expect the human to remain, to continue to have two sides. He can either be happy or he can be sad. No, this is what happens when you give a human, or anything for that matter, free will. You get a third side. The side. He can be either of these two. He can be happy or sad. But he can also be this. What is this? This is what free will gets you. This is the price of free will on humanity. And that's what Cold Fact by Sixto Rodriguez is all about. Freedom and no freedom. So free will or no free will. The basics of free will on a society. So you may think, well, he's got some good tunes at Sixto. He's got some good beats. And you could think, oh, he made music like over 40 years ago, like over 50 years ago. What could he have that could influence my life? What could he have to say that has anything to do with me? Because I'm the center. This generation doesn't really understand what's come before it and how that can be used to guide it. Well, I'll tell you. Sixto Rodriguez is a man who has looked into the soul of secular society and taken what was a problem then and done magic on it, so it's become a timeless artifact. Let's look at today. Let's look at a more modern example. The rise in two-party states. So a very popular example is America. America is generally seen as a two-party state because you have the two dominating parties. You have the Democrats and the Republicans. And so, you do have you have a third party, a fourth party. You have as many parties as you want, but they're minor parties. And in the human mind, we can only have two parties. That's kind of there's enough evidence to suggest that if one got knocked down, another will rise, but that one that got knocked down will never become a third. This is very obvious because it's seen in the UK, for example. You have Labour and Conservatives. Of course, the Liberals not too long ago, about 100 years ago, it was free. You could say the UK was a free party state because the Liberals, the Labour, and the Conservative Party were battling for success. They each had governments about 100 years ago, pre-World War II. But since then, it's generally accepted that we have two major parties in the UK, Labour and Conservative. And so there we have two examples, two of the most influential democratic countries, but also two of the biggest countries in the world. And that is also interesting because going back to the idea of two sides, there are two sides to things. And so you have a coin. You can either have one or the other. Do we believe that a coin has free will if it can only have two outcomes? No. No, we don't believe a coin has free will because it can't choose for itself, and it can also not be, it cannot pick anything other than what it has, which is also very interesting, but that's for something else. So it is generally accepted that humans have free will. That's why we have this little thing. We do things which don't exactly make sense, which is why it is deemed as free will. But why is it that when we look at politics and the world, generally there are two outstanding positions that we can have? We can disregard the minor examples because from modern statistics and data, we can see that everything eventually collides into two-party state and eventually, as I will get to, one-party states. So why is it we have free will, but we can express more than two emotions, we can express an array of emotions, but why is it that we always get two in politics, and we always seem to have two major opinions? We can either like something or we don't. Why is it that we cannot have abstract opinions? Well, in Cold Fact, the album from, I believe it is 1970, but I'll just make sure. Never mind. But yes, in Sixto Rodriguez' album, Cold Fact, it is an expression of the human free will in the face of our overly lacking freedom, in the face of the lack of freedom in politics and government and state and everything in between. It is like a human looking at a robot. You're mine, we made you, why can't you be like us? Why can't you express the same complexities as us? And that's the whole deal of Cold Fact. That is the cold fact that we as humans do not have the correct methods to express free will into things like we do to express it ourselves, if that makes any sense. So why am I talking about this album? Well, its music is interesting, but you can have a good beat, you can have good instrumentals, and that can be fine. But what a lot of people believe to be the strongest point of Cold Fact And maybe the strongest point of most modern music is the lyrics. What do the lyrics have to tell us? Why do the lyrics draw us? Because just as the strings on a guitar create something completely unique based on how they are played and which ones are played, so are words, so are the choice of words in the lyrics. Sixto Rodriguez uses words like he would an instrument, and he is clearly a master of words. He is a man of letters. So he has taken what could be a very mediocre protest song, I'm not entirely sure if Bob Dylan was pre-Rodriguez or post, or even at the same time. They were around at the same time, but I'm not sure which one got their major start first. But if he's just a sort of Bob Dylan-esque instead of his own identity, but he has expressed something with his lyrics, which most musicians struggle with. And that is kind of why I'm doing this, because Cold Fact goes into something deeper than a lot of music will do. It goes into the struggle between the man who works, who lives, who dies, versus our own creation, our own systems, our own laws. It is the struggle of human free will against the cage that we create. It's beautiful. It's magnificent. That's why I want to talk about that. So, I started talking about politics quite a lot. Maybe you don't agree with what I'm saying about the systems in place in most democratic countries and the big countries, but it is important to understand the messaging behind Cold Fact. So, to understand the art, you must understand the artist. Rodriguez was born in Michigan, Ohio, 1943, to a family of Native Americans who, for one generation, actually lived in China, but then moved back because why the fuck would you do that? Yeah. That tells you something. They're a weird bunch, but because they're weird, they're expressing themselves, which is what Rodriguez does with his music. He expresses sentiments and ideas which are unconventional, like a Native American family moving to China and then moving back. It's weird. And so Rodriguez grew up with his family, and he, from an early age, wanted to be a tap dancer. Well, we know that didn't happen. No, he realized that Native Americans were not popular in the tap dancing scene, and also tap dancing kind of died with the end of the 50s. And Fred Astaire was Fred Astaire was no longer the leading man he was. No one could give a hoot about him. And so Sixto, which is his name, not like a nickname like these rappers like Playboi Carti and Charlie XCX. So he went and he learned the guitar from a neighbor named Roger. What is it? Roger. Franksky, a Jewish fugitive who fled Germany during the war, but he was a good guitarist. One of the, he made some good music, but I won't ever review him because it's such like a small discography, and also he didn't really, there's not a good record of him, but it is known that he was the tutor and musical teacher of Sixto Rodriguez, and he taught him from the age of 12 till 18. Where Sixto joined his first band, he suffered from an acute sense of self-loathing, Rodriguez, because of his heritage and also because he just hated himself. So he joined his first band at 18 with a couple of chums, and he began making music. Very conventional. At the time, the Beatles were on the rise, and there was a peace and love sentiment. Tensions were growing between the US and the USSR, and so he decided to make something different, because when there is a difference in the world, people get distracted and they lose themselves in that. So he wanted to distract people. He wanted to show people that there was something to focus on, which wasn't frickin' pop or war. So he made some very unconventional folk albums, gospel. He did a few gospel. They weren't very good. Coming from someone who listens to a lot of gospel, they were not good. So he made that, and his entire time doing that, he was running away from convention. He didn't want to be labeled. He was so tired of watching everything in the news being set on opinions, and he was so tired of seeing everything, people going, I love the Beatles, if you hate the Beatles, I'll kill you. And he saw this as very much a reflection of the tensions between the US and the USSR, because basically, if you don't know, you take the US and the USSR, the main conflict was their politics. The US was capitalist, and the USSR were communist. And so the US and the USSR were being like, fuck you, you don't believe what I believe? Well, fuck you. And Khrushchev, who was the leader at the time, was like, and who was it? I think it was Kennedy, JFK. JFK was like, Khrushchev, yeah, Khrushchev, come on, man. And the whole thing was just like, why can't you get... Sixto was like, why can't you just get along? Why can't you just respect each other? Jesus Christ, you're grown men. My God. And so he was trying to escape the labels. He didn't want to be like them. He wanted people to just listen to him because he made music. He didn't want them to listen to him because someone says, oh, this guy's a really good folk singer, eh? This guy's really good, eh? This guy makes good gospel music. Oh, did you hear his latest alternative rock? Eh? And he didn't want that. He didn't want to be labeled. He wanted to just be Rodriguez. That's what he is. He's Rodriguez. He's not Rodriguez the pop singer. He's not Rodriguez the rapper, even though there was very little rap at the time. He was doing all this in a time of very heated opinions, because the Red Scare was going on as he grew up, and everything that had to do with global tensions was just rising, and he wanted to escape that. So he made music that criticized the systems that caused all this. If these systems weren't in place, he says, then none of this would happen. Okay, so here we get to Cold Fact. An album which is all about the man, the children, the people of a ambiguous country, but of a modern country governed by a modern state. It could be communist, it could be capitalist, it could be frickin' anarchist, it could be anything. But it is a state, it is a government who governs people. And those people, the songs, commit to their suffering, to their loneliness, to their isolation, to their lack of freedom. We are free creatures, but when we limit ourselves, that's when we go nuts. And he wanted to express that. He wanted to show that. There are some very brilliant films. Films? Yeah, there's some very brilliant films that cover this topic visually. There are some interesting books that cover this topic with beautiful words and imagery. There are very few good songs that cover this topic, just because songs, more now than ever, have been governed by popularity and are appealing to the masses. That is what this is, So Cold Fact, when Cold Fact came out, it was a sensation to no one. Yes, it was. It did so poorly. It undersold it. It was a failure. Basically it was. And so Rodriguez set himself on fire, and that was the end of him. But it wasn't the end of his music, because Cold Fact lived on, because down in Australia and South Africa, especially South Africa, it sold like hotcakes. And so why would someplace like South Africa and not America begin consuming this beautiful art? Well, because South Africa was experiencing a period of extreme anti-authority belief. It was, if you don't know, at the time it was apartheid. So the government wanted to split the black South Africans from the white South Africans because they were scared of violence and conflict and just chaos reigning. And no, the actual people, did not want this. So they protested. And while protesting, they found a little album in the streets called Cold Fact by Rodriguez, and they put it on, and the songs like hang on, I wrote this down, it's not working. Famous songs like This Is Not a Song, It's an Outburst, or The Establishment Blues, that's a very famous protest song from this album, or Hate Street Dialogue, Inner City Blues, or Gamera, a nursery rhyme. These are very good examples of protest songs that basically go against state and say, your job is to work for us, but instead you are lying to us, you are using us, you do not care about us. That's what that is. And next to that, there are more songs. that aren't directly anti-state, but instead are songs which protest the human condition and the expression of one's own free will in a society which does not frankly care about its own free will. So some notable songs covering this topic. This may not be all, but this is the ones that seemed obvious to me, were Sugar Man, Crucify Your Mind, Forget It, I Wonder. Yeah, those are some good. There are other ones you could read as that, but those are the ones that just caught my mind. This album really struck with people in South Africa. He was bigger than Elvis there. Bigger than fucking Elvis. Elvis goddamn Presley. So, coming back to the two sides. A human made a coin. A human made a coin because he wanted to express something. He used his free will to make a coin. He gave the coin two sides because he did not need the coin to have free will. Humans created government and state. He did this so that there could be law and order. When this was made, this was simply a pragmatic decision to abolish chaos, to establish order. At the time of this conception, there was no need for it to evolve because there was no real evolution in political thought and science and economics and social ideology. No. The government was a very secular, very simple tool to just control people. That's what it was. So how does that work out when you try and control people with free will? Well, look at this. This love heart, as you can see, represents the love and free will of people. Now, you have this, and you create a government. Now let me show you, using this pen, what happens when you create a government that tries to control people with free will. Let me just show you. Give me a mo. You put it in a cage. Can free will survive in a cage? No, it's going to fight back. It's fighting back. Oh my god, what's happening? Oh no, the state has to keep it in. He has to keep it in. Oh no, what's happening? Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my... The lighter's not working. But if it did, this is what happens. That's what happens. That's what Rodriguez is talking about. That's what he's talking about. Give me a moment. That's what he's talking about. That is the cold fact. There are two sides to a government. We have more than two sides. We cannot coexist. That's what he's talking about. I didn't mean to hit my desk. Okay, that concludes part one of the review. If you like this, like and subscribe so I can make part two. My budgets are getting lower and lower. Yeah. Check out Rodriguez Colfax on Spotify, Apple Music, or YouTube Music. I'm not sponsored, but just do it. Goodbye.